Microsoft Word offers a built-in accessibility checker. Like the other built-in accessibility checkers in other Microsoft Office documents like PowerPoint, the checker is helpful, but not a substitute for understanding best practices. That's really important to keep in mind. Again, the checker is helpful, but it is not a substitute for understanding best practices. When we demo this tool, you're going to get a sense very quickly of what the accessibility checker misses in its checking. It can really only check what is actually in the document according to a specific set of checks. The accessibility checker cannot make recommendations. Some of the common checks that it performs include the use of heading styles, missing alt text, unclear hyperlink text, table heading information, and then checks for blank table rows or columns. All of these checks assume that we are already using heading styles, for example. And you'll see how this plays out in the demo. The key here is to author the content accessibly first. And I'll repeat that. Author the content accessibly first according to best practices, and then you can use the accessibility checker afterwards to check for any remaining issues. Although the accessibility checker built into Microsoft Word can check for heading use, missing alt text, table header information, and other common accessibility issues, it is not a substitute for understanding accessibility best practices in Word. As a responsible content creator, you should author the content accessibly first, and then use the checker to screen for remaining issues. With this word of caution in mind, let's return to our Word document and see what the accessibility checker can do. We're going to start with a version of the Word document where we've already applied all the best practices shown in the demo videos in this module. Proper use of headings and list styles to organize information, proper formatting for tables, images and links, appropriate color contrast, document properties, and so on. To run the accessibility checker on our Word document, we click File from the main menu and select Check for Issues button. Then, in the drop-down, we select Check Accessibility. The Accessibility Checker task pane appears next to the document content and shows the inspection results. Not surprisingly, the inspection results indicate no accessibility issues found. Wow, that's great! According to the Word Accessibility Checker, we've done a good enough job of applying best practices to achieve a passing accessibility inspection. But what if we started with a different version of our Word document, one in which we had not applied any best practices? If we open our unformatted best practices version of this document and run the accessibility checker, we start to see some issues emerge. In the inspection results panel, the accessibility checker has identified one error, missing alt text, on the ballerina image, and a warning, objects not in line, because the image has not been placed in line with the text layer. If we click the Picture 1 link under the Missing Alt Text Error section in the inspection results list, the image of the ballerina in the document is highlighted. And we get some additional information in the accessibility checker panel about why the missing alt text is an issue, along with some step-by-step directions on how to fix the issue. Again, this is helpful for spotting issues we might have missed during the authoring process. But let's step back now for a minute and think about what the accessibility checker did not catch. If it did not catch the fact that there were no heading styles used to organize the page content, it did not pick up on the vague link, click here. It did not detect missing document properties like title, author, subject, keywords. It did not check for sufficient color contrast ratios between the text font and background. So if we weren't aware of these issues and were relying entirely on the accessibility checker, this document would not receive any heading styles, descriptive link text, document properties, or color contrast adjustments that might be needed. In short, the accessibility checker is limited by a specific set of checks it performs based on the existing content. To further illustrate, let's look at another version of our Word document, this time one with heading and list styles applied, and a table. Now, when we run the accessibility checker, we notice that it is detected that the table doesn't have a header row and is missing an alt text summary. If we scroll down in the inspection results pane to the tips section, the skipped heading level result reveals that the heading Part 1, Touch Your Toes, has skipped a heading level. If we check that manually in our document by clicking the link in the inspection results pane, we discover that we've moved from a heading level 1 in the title of our document to a heading level 3 with Part 1, Touch Your Toes. To maintain a logical structure, heading levels should be organized in a nested sequential way. Heading level 2 should be under heading level 1, heading 3 under heading level 2, etc. If we fix the heading issue by changing Part 1, Touch Your Toes, to a heading 2, we notice that the skipped heading level tip disappears from the inspection results list. Similarly, if we add a table header to our table, we notice that the no header row specified error disappears. Again, let's remember what the accessibility checker is and is not capable of. As we saw earlier, if there were no headings at all in our document, the checker simply didn't check for heading organization. If there were no tables, it didn't check for table formatting. The accessibility checker is limited by a specific set of checks it runs on the existing content. At this time, at least, there's no automated substitute for a fundamental understanding of accessibility best practices for Word documents. No tool that can advise on when and how best to apply headings and list styles to organize information, when and how best to use tables, images, links, and appropriate color contrast. Overall, in this lesson, you've learned how to use the accessibility checker built into Microsoft Word to help you identify and fix some common accessibility issues. Perhaps more importantly, you've learned why the accessibility checker is not a substitute for understanding accessibility best practices in Word. As a responsible content creator, you should do your best to author the Word document accessibly first by applying the best practices we've learned in this module, and then use the accessibility checker to screen for any remaining issues.